Welcome to the SpartanMag.com VCast. Jim Comparoni, Paul Konyndyk. Spartan Stadium, Michigan State loses to Maryland 31-9. The score is really ugly. Michigan State up against it to try to prevent the season from going into a tailspin. It's too early to talk about that yet, especially based on how Michigan State played pretty hard today, and despite the final score getting down 21-0, continued to play hard, which you might not think is a big thing, but I was kind of expecting guys to kind of go their own way and things to spiral. Did not spiral today despite the score. Everybody knows what the big stat was, 5 turnovers. But, when this game was getting into like the early third quarter, or even into halftime, I was thinking, this not only is this game over, but the season is over is what I was thinking. I'm not convinced of that now, based on how they played in the second half, and some of the attitudes and things like that seem positive for now. That can change abruptly, but they showed some fight, Paul. So I'm not ready to say that they don't have a chance to get to 6-6, get to a postseason for what that's worth. But Michigan State did some decent things on defense, hung around, but the turnovers were too much to overcome.
Yeah, I mean, you look at all the times the turnovers and then all the times that Michigan State's offense was moving the ball down the field. 27 first downs in this game. I can't remember a time where Michigan State had 27 first downs and only came away with 9 points. I felt like you go back and you look
Might be never.
Right, but you go back and you look at the game last year against Maryland. I felt like that was a game where the final score was not indicative of how close that game was. This game was really well contested, and those turnovers they hurt Michigan State badly. But you look at how Maryland scored, and each of their first 3 touchdowns got the ball on Michigan State's side of the 50, and it wasn't
2 of the 3.
2 of the 3, okay. But I mean, it was difficult for Michigan State. They're put in sudden change situations with a lot of new personnel. Jordan Hall starting his first game, Chance Rucker, the freshman, starting, and all those guys were tested. And I feel like the defense in this game, those guys played hard. This is a better defensive performance than I expected, given the personnel on the field. That to me is a positive thing.
Uh-huh.
And the other thing is these guys never kept fighting. And what I wanted to see from the Michigan State defense is I wanted to see a little bit of what we saw last year, where even when the team is moving the ball on them, they bow up and they find a way to get some stops in the red zone. But the fight that this defense showed, I think the best example of that was in the second. I think it was in the second half, but the fake punt. Yeah, but that was in the third quarter. But Michigan State gets them stopped on it's 4th and 10, a fake punt. Maryland moves the ball down the field, and then Michigan State finds a way to get them stopped. That doesn't mean they have a great defense. It doesn't mean that Maryland's as good as Washington, because they're not. But this defense did some things that I think they can build on moving forward. It's really, in my opinion, the offense really let them down today, and they left a lot of points on the field.
Yeah, Maryland. We're not here trying to make it look like Maryland's great.
They're not.
And people are going to say, well, they're going to criticize us for saying we're not. Why are we talking about moral victories with Maryland? I'm not talking about moral victories. Talking about anything that was on this field today that could carry over to winning football games in the future is what I'm talking about. Maryland came in ranked number one in the Big Ten in total offense, 480 yards a game. That doesn't mean they're the best offense in the Big Ten, but they're pretty good, and they're prolific. They put up numbers. Against Michigan State, they put up, 360 yards total offense, 362. So, 362 yards of total offense. If you'd have told me they're going to hold them to 362, and yes, the word is hold them to 362, and hold Tagovailoa to 233, I'd be like, man, I didn't expect that. And Michigan State's right in this game, but 5 turnovers to 1. Before this game, if you'd have told me 5 turnovers to 1, I would have said Michigan State's got zero chance. But early in the fourth quarter, they still had a chance. I give Michigan State credit for hanging in there, getting some stops, doing some things on defense, not coming apart. Some of those screws that were loose last week were tightened up a little bit better against a different opponent. But, I didn't see any glaring coverage busts against an offense that will put pressure on you through the air. Tagovailoa is an explosive guy. And what I was saying to you, when it was 21-0, 21-3, I kept saying to you at halftime, I said, it's 21-3 and Tagovailoa hasn't done anything yet. And I kept saying that all day. And the whole day he really didn't do what he normally does. I'm not exactly sure how Michigan State kept a lid on him. I do think Maryland ran the ball a little more than they would have because they had the lead. But still, Michigan State's defense, that they feel like they had a better week of practice. I asked Halliday about that and SpartanMag. That first week of practice after the Tucker thing hit, it was a scramble. This week they felt like it was more constructive, and I think it showed itself out here for most players. But one fumble by Carter, a couple interceptions by Kim unraveled a lot of that.
Yeah, and then the late interception by, he had some
Katenhauser's interception.
Some bad, timely, bad passes or dropped passes. I mean, you think of all. We could list off 10 different drops, misplays. Like Katenhauser, he had the interception on the screenplay, but before that, he had another screen pass out on the other side of the formation, where it was blocked up really well, but it was a really inaccurate screen pass, and what could have gone for a big chunky yards went for absolutely nothing. I mean, that was a good play, one of the best blocked up plays, that I've seen this year, and little things like that, or. Kim having the opportunities to, he threw some really good balls right before halftime after Michigan State got the field goal drive.
Yeah, one to Foster, and what was the other one? They had one to Foster and one to on that drive before halftime. It was really nice.
One to Franklin that was dropped, one to Foster, and Foster had some really good catches in this game too as well.
So don't worry about them. So Kim did a good job with some passes. The first field goal drive, he moved his feet and had a nice, strong arm pass to the wide side of the field out to Foster, like a 10-yard gain, but it got that drive going. Really strong play there, and on that drive at the end of the half, he had some good moments, showed the arm, but then you get the interceptions. He had 2 interceptions. Lucky he didn't have 2 more, but he had Montorie Foster drop a pass in the end zone. Then another time Montorie Foster gets open, should have been a touchdown, overthrew him. In any football game, you can point to, 7 or 8 plays, or sometimes 3 or 4 that could have changed it. And you're looking at a 31-9 score. Normally, you wouldn't think that 2 or 3 plays would have that big of a difference. But if Carter doesn't fumble, and if Montorie Foster catches one, he doesn't overthrow the other one. The fumble gives them a short field touchdown. Give them credit for capitalizing on that one. But then the screen pass down there when it's 24-9 that Katenhauser threw, you just take away 3 plays. Right. And now the screen, they made a play on that, and that was a Michigan State mistake. But just 2 passes. Kim connects doesn't overthrow Foster on the one. Foster catches the other one. Then this is a tight game. This is a 1-touchdown game with 5 minutes to go. I really believe that because Maryland was trying to pull away. They couldn't quite get it going. Really just a couple of plays there. And I don't mean it sound like that's a great deal. Oh, a couple of plays and you're almost in the game with Maryland? Is that how far the program has sunk? Yes, it is. And that's what and that compounds the thing when you have a loss like last week and everything that's been going on with the Mel Tucker scandal. It has sunk quite drastically, yet against a Maryland team that's 4-0. Last year they won 8 games, won a bowl game, and Michigan State at the line of scrimmage was pretty good against them. And pass defense, pretty good. And a couple of plays away from having a chance to sneak out of here with this, which I have to say, coming into this game, Paul, I didn't expect Michigan State to win, and they didn't. 31-9 is ugly, but there was some progress if they can keep it up.
Yeah, but 31-9, if you wrote in your pre-snap read, if you wrote in there any scenario where there's a 5-1,
no,
so that's ugly right there.
Yeah,
5 turnovers against a team that's leading the Big Ten in offense. They've got they've got the most experienced quarterback in the Big Ten. There's no arguably about that. He's a good football player. They've got some good skill players, and they run the football better than they did last year. You said that you felt like maybe they didn't throw it as much. I feel like they're trying to run the ball more this year, and I think they're doing a pretty good job of that. They've got their backup tailbacks are pretty solid. Michigan State did a nice job on those guys. The Littleton guy, the other dude, McDonald, he's a handful, and then Hemby, Hemby took his licks today, and he's a nice player as well. But so when you look at Michigan State, the injury report, I can't. People are like, oh, this is a terrible loss, but you look at the number of guys that did not play in this game for Michigan State, and you're like, if you said 5 turnovers, you said there's no Jacoby Windman, no Chris Bogle, you said no Jaden Mangum in the second half,
yeah.
No Chuck Brantley. You look at the guys that you kind of think are pretty semi-reliable players. You just take Windman away, and we said going into this game we knew that there was going to be down defensive linemen, but you take those guys away, and then you're thinking about are these guys going to wear down? Michigan State's defense did not wear down today, and that was impressive. And so, is it a moral victory? No, there's no such thing as a moral victory. But if you told me all those things ahead of time and said that Michigan State's offense was going to make mistake after mistake, and you changed 3 plays, there were several others. You look at Michigan State very first drive or get down to the goal line, 4th and 2, 4th and goal. That was a missed scoring opportunity. Even the field goal drive, that was a missed scoring opportunity. Jalen Franklin dropping passes. There's lots of that kind of stuff going on out there. And so it's not a good thing because Michigan State's not at a spot where you can be like, hey, they had 3 good plays in a row on offense. But when you look at what I think is kind of one of the weaknesses, maybe in some ways the offensive line, and then you look at, not very great pass protection today. Some other things.
It came and it went. Sometimes it was okay, sometimes it wasn't. In other words, it wasn't great, right?
Right. So, inconsistent. And I thought, honestly, with the guys that they had coming back, the experience that they had, that I figured this would be more like 2021, where Michigan State had a very underrated offensive line. Sure, they had Ken Walker and all that, but that offensive line was much better than people I think gave them credit for. This offensive line, either it hasn't gelled yet, or it's just kind of a mishmash that the pieces don't fit very well.
For example, everybody is second-guessing the 4th and 1 run play. It was a bare front, and they were overloaded over there. The reason everybody is second-guessing it is because nobody had confidence in the offensive line. Right. That's why everybody's thinking, you go play action and you throw it there, which I probably would have thought that too. Michigan State thought that they could saddle up and run the ball and pick that up, and I don't think anyone was surprised that it was stopped. Spencer Brown and Evan Morris on that side of the line kind of got buckled a little bit and really never had a chance to that play never had a chance. So, but then Maryland gets and they go 95. That was the one drive that they really earned, going 95 yards there. And at that point, I thought it'd be like just the usual deal with this defense. Maryland's going to go for 550 yards, and that didn't turn out that way.
I think one of the big reasons it didn't turn out that way is, Maryland, they've got good schemes and good concepts, and a lot of the plays that they run are 7-yard gains, those type of things. They'll do a 3-yard run, they'll do like a 5-yard pass, and lots of times those 5-yard passes turn into explosives. Maryland leads the Big Ten in explosive plays coming into this game. They didn't turn into explosives today because Michigan State tackled in space very, very well.
And Michigan State in the third quarter went a lot of single safety deep man-to-man, and then sent some blitzes and disrupted him. He's a guy that, coming into this game, he had better completion percentage and explosiveness when blitzed or pressured than when not. So Michigan State chose to go after them and turn up some blitzes and didn't get hurt by it. And they did that with Chance Rucker, a true freshman out there playing corner, Dylan Tatum, a second-year guy out there at corner, Malik Spencer, a second-year guy, true sophomores. And Armorion Smith played all of the second half. So, Michigan State got that done, and you didn't see receivers running wide open today.
And you had Jordan Hall out there a lot. So that's another guy that it's a true freshman. No, you didn't see him running wide open. But one of the differences between Tagovailoa and Michael Penix is just straight up arm strength. And I
think it's between Penix and everybody in the country, except for the guy at Tennessee, Milton.
But just in terms of you see launch angle. Penix is one of those guys that he can hit any kind of pass at whatever angle using his arm, and he gets the ball there so quickly. I felt like on some of his intermediate to deep passes, after playing against Penix, where you've got to be right up on the receiver and they've got big receivers, there's times where Michigan State defensive backs could either get back into phase or it wasn't quite on them as fast. I felt there's more opportunities to make plays, and I was surprised at the fact that there wasn't a lot of panic. I felt like Dylan Tatum, he had a nice pass breakup. Malik Spencer had a couple. He had a couple chances to get picks today, and he didn't get them. And I think with a couple of those, that one Spencer, could have been an interception. It could have been maybe a pick six. There's just a lot of plays out there that Michigan State they woulda, coulda, shoulda. Maybe it doesn't count, but against this team. I would have thought coming in after seeing what we saw last week that this kind of team would be more of a kryptonite for Michigan State, and I thought Michigan State did a nice job And it'll be interesting to see moving forward if this defense can keep on building in the right direction as they get pieces back. Because, like as we mentioned before, you didn't have Bogle, you didn't have Windman, you didn't have Brantley, and Michigan State should get some of those guys back in the near future.
You know, last week Barnett was talking about, you know, that they coached the guys up to get ready for Washington, then they got out in the field. It's like, why you did it one way all week in practice, then you get out in the game and you do it wrong. And this week, you can see that there might have been a lot more of that mud stuck on the wall, a lot more of that stuck, not against the same passing attack, but you didn't have, you know, breakdowns. And so I think some of those young defensive backs grew, and that's good going forward. As far as some of the comments after the game, interesting that Harlan Barnett brought up that he asked everybody in the room, hey, who here thinks we don't have a chance? Who thinks that it's over or whatever? Which is a good conversation to have right now. But just take a step back and think about that. What coach in America has to ask his team at 2-2 that question? And you have to ask this team because it's an interim coach and all that they've been through, getting destroyed last week, and it looks bad on the scoreboard here. And the answer was, as you probably know, nobody raised their hand, and Barnett said, "Who's not? Anyone here doesn't want to go forward with us?" And then Barnett said, other leaders echoed it, like, "Yeah, who doesn't want to? And who doesn't want to? Who wants to back out right now?" And nobody did. Some people are expecting that in this day and age of players opting out to preserve redshirt status. There are, a good 12, 13 players on this team that have never redshirted. Are they going to do a Connor Hayward in redshirt and keep that? I don't know. It's a fair question. That's the landscape of college football today. We're not even out of September, and we're asking questions amongst ourselves, those type of things. I don't know enough about what goes on inside the locker room. I guess from the way outside looking in, it wouldn't surprise me if one or two did that. I've not heard that. I do know that other programs have representatives that are talking to these players about being in the portal after the season. But in terms of people opting out right now to preserve redshirt status, I really don't know what to expect there. But what about that, Paul? That's a conversation that Barnett felt he needed to have today, and I agree with him. I think it was the right conversation.
Well, I think it's a narrative that's out there, right? You got the week 4, you got the portal opening up, and the thing is with Connor Hayward, we can talk about that, but he had lost his job. He wasn't going to be the tailback anymore. It was obvious that he wasn't the guy, and I think that that's a little bit different, in my opinion, than somebody out there like let's say like a Chance Rucker. He's got an opportunity to play, and he's got an opportunity to play and get experience and play against some of the best teams in the country. And to me, that's more advantageous for him. Like, let's say if he hit the portal later on, to be playing against Ohio State,
yes,
to be playing against guys like this, to be playing against some of the receivers and some of the running backs, and you can't fake your way through the Big Ten. So if you can put good tape out there, it behooves these guys, even if they are going to think about transferring out later on, to put that tape out there. That's a whole lot better for them than to preserve a red shirt. Now, it could be totally different if you're not playing. And as far as true freshmen, the guys that haven't played, they still get 4 games before they have to redshirt. So it's one of those things. I think the narrative is out there because we talk about portal. We all know the numbers that go with when you have a coaching change. So it's a narrative out there, but competitors and guys that feel like they put themselves in this position to play, you're not going to work all season long to miss out on your opportunity to play if you're young. I can see it with some guys that maybe they got 2 years left, and they're semi dinged up right now, and they're like, what am I going to do? And I can see with those type of guys, but for a young guy, you've got a lot of eligibility left, in my opinion. And the other thing is, like, you've been working towards something. You want to be able to go out on the field. You want to play, and every one of these guys, none of these guys that think they're going to play in the NFL are thinking, well, if I screw this up and I waste a year of eligibility, I'm going to hurt my chances at doing X, Y, or Z. I think they're probably thinking, if they're thinking about transferring later on, is I'm going to do as much as I can this year to help this team, and then we'll see what happens. The better I do, the better NIL deal I'll get, that type of thing.
Yeah, they surprised me today with their second half performance today. Maybe they'll surprise a little bit more heading out for the remainder of the season. We'll see, and maybe they'll surprise me in terms of not. Maybe no one will go to early enter into the portal. I
want to go back to the whole Tagovailoa, the job that Michigan State did on him. I don't know if that was a delayed blitz. in some ways, but they sent kind of guys in
corner blitz. He's coming from a longer way away.
Right.
And
So
they'd send a corner, and then they'd rotate into a cover 4. And when they blitzed a corner, it was still a 4-man rush. So it was a zone blitz with a corner coming.
Right, but you had it felt like in terms of it felt like what you're saying. It's not like it's not like it's so overloaded and you're sending the house, but it feels like that to the quarterback because it feels like he's getting a wave. He's got one guy coming at him. You get a defensive line making a push, and then you've got someone jetting in there really fast, and it's enough to change the eye level. And I think that's really critical.
They had some. Michigan State had some good little exotics today. They
didn't get him on the ground. I mean, they had 6 or 7 or 8 maybe quarterback hurries. But they pushed him off a spot. They made him throw short of where he wanted to throw. And, he threw to the right spot, but then guys made tackles. And in space, they got him on the ground. There's a lot. In the first half, even when they had the short fields, there was a lot of 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2 type situations. In the second half, there was a whole lot more 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, 3rd and longs. And Michigan State did a really nice job with that.
On those corner blitzes, there was one early in the game when Chance Rucker was coming in, had him, and he lost contain and let him get out, and he picked up the first down. I think that might have been the 95-yard touchdown drive. Other than that, those blitzes affected him a little bit. And he makes you pay if you blitz, but Michigan State, survived a lot of those. He had the 138-yarder when Tumise Adeleye had jumped offside, so it's a free play. And he throws one up, 50-50 ball against Rucker, and the guy makes a catch. If they don't jump offside there, he doesn't throw that ball 'cause he's not really open. That's a throw you make if you're down 10 in the third quarter, but he probably doesn't. I'm sure he doesn't attempt that, except for the offside. So Noah Kim goes out and throws 2 interceptions. First one, second drive of the game, and it's probably part of the play progression. Drops back and pumps over here, and then throws the dig to Mosley, and it was late. He was open earlier. I'm just wondering, because Noah Kim was not open for interviews today, I'm just wondering if that pump delayed his read on that at all. I don't know. But it was late, and that was a quote-unquote bad interception. And then the other one, Michigan State's down 21-9, I think. They've got momentum. They had momentum like from the second and third and part of the fourth quarter. In terms of momentum, they had more momentum time-wise than Maryland did. So they had momentum going, and, it's second play. They just stopped him on 4th down, or they missed it. I think Angelo Gross maybe just had the interception. Michigan State's got momentum. It's second down, and Samac snaps it early. Offensive line's not set, so Maryland's defense is on him right now, and he throws kind of a jump ball and it gets intercepted. He made a bad play worse. Easy for me to say. Right. Like Barnett said, these guys are competitors, are trying to win a game. So he's got confidence. I can still make this play and pick this up. Whereas he'll learn that, and they'll go over it on the film, hey, don't make a bad play worse. Just throw that away, come back on 3rd and 4. Threw an interception there. Samac said, I asked Samac about that, and he said that he thought that he heard, based on what the cadence was for that snap, he thought he heard it. For instance, if it was on 2 or whatever the cadence is, he thought he heard it and snapped it. When they talked about it, he said, I guess I didn't. So he took blame for that. It's not that he forgot the snap count. He just thought he heard what they had called for. And bad play worse, and that's his second interception. Hauser throws an interception. We'll just talk about Kim for now. Those 2 interceptions, the sack, hurt his ankle, and he could have went back in the game. He told them he was okay, apparently, because Barnett said the decision to go with Hauser was to try to get a spark. Right. So Kim, 2 interceptions, had some good moments. Barnett says Kim is our guy. He's our quarterback. You can tell Barnett doesn't want there to be a quarterback controversy or anything. I heard that Hauser did get more reps with the ones this week than he had previously during the regular season. So your thoughts on Kim, his job, and that whole thing?
Well, I think he threw a lot of really good passes in some difficult situations. Like when Hauser came into the game, that is I'm not saying it's a relaxed time, but Maryland's up fairly comfortably. He's got to be more accurate. But here's one of the things that I don't know. I feel like there's still a lot of routes and there's still a lot of plays out there where it just doesn't feel like everything's right.
With Hauser?
With Kim. Like not with him as a quarterback, but there's some things where why are these 2 guys in the same area on this play?
It's happened a couple times.
So that happened that happened maybe 4 or 5 times. 2 occasions where Michigan State made plays on it.
One was Hauser though. on that one.
Right. One was one of those was Hauser, but there's a few times in the game where I just don't know, and there's a couple times where it's like, okay, on the one, I can't remember exactly when it was, but it was a pass attempt to Antonio Gates. Antonio Gates is going down the field. I felt like maybe he should have come back for the ball. The way it was thrown to him, I think that Noah Kim thought he should come back for the ball. But there's 4 or 5.
What ended up happening on that play? I forget. I know which one you're talking about, but I can't remember what the result was.
It ended up being thrown
in the ground to nobody?
5 yards short, where it was thrown to an area. So what it felt like on that play, without looking at it, but it's like one of those deals where you've got guys going downfield and you got things cleared out. A guy comes back, and I felt like Antonio Gates, if he would have come back to the ball, that would have been. It would have been.
I'm guessing that was not that's not the quarterback. I'm guessing
that's what I'm guessing as well. And there has been whether it's Jerron Glover or Antonio Gates or maybe even Terrell Henry. Sometimes they're like on some of these guys that haven't played a ton. It just feels like there's either a handful of these routes every game where it just doesn't pass. It just doesn't seem right. It doesn't smell right. You've got like a tight end in the area that maybe he shouldn't be or whatever. And So I think that Kim has to be a lot smarter with the way he plays. At the same time, pass protection, you can say, well, they kept him clean a lot. The problem is he doesn't know when those pass protection stuff is going to break down. So he's trying to make plays out there.
I thought he was a little more settled in the pocket today than last week. I mean, Maryland's pass rush is not as good as Washington, right, but I thought he was a little less uneasy.
Yeah, and you know what? I know the rushing yards weren't great. But Nathan Carter, when he ran the ball, he besides the fumble, he was a pretty effective rushing threat. I think he finished with 95 yards. Michigan State had like under 100 yards, but there's minus 37 was sack yards. So that I thought there's a lot of times where Michigan State you would have a 4 or 5 yard gain. There's a lot of those kind of runs today. It felt like Michigan State did some good things when Nathan Carter had the ball.
They had the run game going a little bit on that up-tempo portion. On that one. The up-tempo has not been great for Michigan State this year, but today they got some up-tempo going on the ground. That was the drive they got down there in 4th and goal at 1 yard line and were stopped. But they had a couple of nice 8, 11 yard chunk plays on the ground that drive.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of 4 or 5 yard runs. It feels like when they've run those same runs up to this point in the season, even against like a Richmond, sometimes against Central, that those were like 2 or 3 yards. And so maybe that's progress, but I don't really know, what to think per se about Kim. It's obvious to me that sometimes he's trying to do too much, and
that's common with quarterbacks.
It is, but
you were here when we covered Kirk Cousins, right?
Heck yeah! I mean, you've got, of course, if you're moving the ball as well as Michigan State did, and they had more yardage than Maryland for most of this game, and you're moving the ball and you're getting in the red zone and you're coming away empty, or you're having guys dropping passes. Yeah, you're going to try to do too much, and it's
like on that SpartanMag play.
Right.
He was desperate, trying to make something happen.
Right, and you got to be smart. What I wanted to say with that is, like, he might be trying to do too much, but the problem is coming forward. You got a Michigan State team going to play Iowa. Now, Iowa is Iowa, and you can't do too much against those guys. And you have to have ball security, but
I mean, you can't try to do too much and make an error.
It's impossible because you try to take something that's not there, and it's going to be a turnover. That's what they're masterful at. You've got to methodically march the ball down the field, and it's a scary thing if you're a quarterback and you're this quarterback, Noah Kim, or even if you're a Caton Hauser, to think like, okay, I have to try to get a 12-play drive, taking what the defense gives me, and hope that a pass protection doesn't break down, hope that my run blocking holds up, hope that my tight ends are going to do the right thing, that everybody's going to, this guy's going to go in motion, hope that we're not having a procedure penalty because we have too many guys in the backfield. It's just a disconcerting type of deal, and we've seen some guys. I'll give you an example, but we've seen some guys that started out kind of hot in their career, like a Rocky Lombardi. He threw for 300 yards a couple times early on as a starting quarterback. He went to Iowa, his home state, looking to try to, to make an impression on the school that recruited him growing up, and he's a good kid, and he wanted to do a good job, and he tried too hard, and basically that blew up his entire. It really kind of was the beginning of the end for him as a quarterback at Michigan State. And Iowa has their scheme, what they do on defense. If you're not smart, if you're not patient, it can really destroy you. And Kim can't do too much. If he does too much, then it's going to get really haywire.
That's what's dangerous. Iowa has created more interceptions than any team in the country in the last 10 years. And Kim, like I said, had 2 picks today, could have had 4. But that SpartanMag play, if Michigan State is like running the ball really well and up 21-7, and they're on pace to have like a 200-yard rushing day, and you get a bad snap, then just to throw it away. Part of the reason he made that play is because they were in I don't want to say it was crisis mode to that point. So he sits. And Hauser comes in, sparks him a little bit, got a little break on that one when he threw to Glover, I think, and I think maybe Henry ended up catching that one because he's in the area. Got lucky on that, made some other plays, got down there and threw that interception on that screen pass. Michigan State's having trouble with short passes, screen passes, and coming into this game, something I wrote in the pre-snap read is that Kim, his completion percentage and his NFL rating or whatever on short passes, like 0 to 6 yards, is way low.
Right.
Whether it's scheme or touch or read, Michigan State needs to get better at some of those quote unquote easier passes. I'm not talking about like checkdowns. I mean it's checkdowns also figure into those stats. But when Michigan State tries to create something short, today, was it Kim or Hauser? Somebody almost threw an interception inside their own 10-yard line on a middle screen that just wasn't developing.
Yeah, I don't know who that was, but you look at the two guys. I feel like Kim is the guy that he's got. It depends on who you're throwing it to too. Like Berger is a guy that I feel like he's the best at catching those. I feel like Kim's more comfortable. I thought he showed some more comfort with Nathan Carter today. I thought Nathan Carter throwing to him, and Carter showed some catching ability. That's not something that he's had on tape as a tailback. So I think that's growth for both those guys. But one of the reasons why I felt coming into the season and coming out of spring ball that I felt like Kim had the upper hand on Caton Hauser was the short passing game. I felt like Hauser took some steps based on what I saw in some of the drill work on those short passes. I felt like he had better touch, but in a game setting, Hauser has not shown me that he can throw an effective short pass.
So Hauser ends up, what is he here? 6 out of 10 with 1 interception, 75 yards, had a 28-yarder in there, that kind of fluky play. Then they bring Levitt in to do the last drive. And we all know what that's all about. You're keeping a freshman warm. They're worried about portal. So you got an interim coach who odds are is not going to be the head coach next year. He's trying. Everybody loves Harlan Barnett, but odds are they're not going to put together enough wins this year for him to keep the job. I'm just saying it like it is. Yet they're making decisions for the long term. Get him on the field. I don't know if it's to make his people at home feel better about it, or to make him feel better about it. But normally you would if you really think that Hauser is pushing Kim for that job and he got more reps during the practice week, you give Hauser that last drive. They give it to Levitt for the reasons I just stated. That's college football in 2023.
Yeah, and I don't know,
Am I wrong about that?
No, the thing is too, you get he's got some NIL money, and that's why he's here, and quite a bit of it, and it's they're not going to win that game. It's good to see him out there. The thing with Noah Kim and Caton Hauser as well, but Noah Kim especially is you see that we say he was benched for a change of pace or whatever, or Hauser came in, but he also was very clearly ankle got rolled up on, and one of the things that Kim is, when you look at him, 6'2", 185. That's not conducive to being durable and going through a season. And you see how can this guy hold up? And if he can't hold up, you've got to have guys oiled up behind him. I'll give you an example of one of the things that you wonder about. They had 2 or 3 plays where they did the rugby scrum type of thing. to pick up short yardage, and you got offensive linemen,
like
tight
the quarterback sneak with the push?
Yeah, quarterback sneak, and you get tight ends and offensive line pushing you from behind, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. You got to get that yardage. I think it's a good way to get yardage, but you got a 6'2", 185 pounder there. That's a whole lot different than having a guy who's 6'5", 240, or 6'3", 220 or whatever. So you wonder about durability sometimes, and you want to see.
What you're about to say is you'd rather not have your quarterback sustain those hits on a quarterback sneak.
Well, that's
what you were getting at, right?
But you got to do what you got to do. But at the same time, when you look at Kim and I see him limp off the field after taking a sack, you have to be concerned about durability throughout the season at his size. I mean, it is what it is. It's like it would be the same if you had Chuck Brantley playing cornerback every single year he's been here. It's like, oh, Chuck is a fierce player. He does this and that, but he's $165, $175. You have to plan for a contingency where he's not going to be on the field because he's injured, and they have that with Kim. It behooves them to get other guys some experience, and I'm not sold that on necessarily on Katin Hauser, really pushing Kim. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't, but you've got to have those guys ready to go, especially. I think there's a mental challenge, a big test coming up with Iowa where that you can really get destroyed mentally as a quarterback. And if whomever starts that game comes out of that game with the yips, you've got to have someone that's able to step in for him.
Yeah, I think Kim will start, and there's a good chance he might not finish. And I do think Hauser's pushing him, and Barnett's going to be, searching for something. Hauser's kind of he's kind of the beefier guy, the thicker guy that maybe can provide more of a physical spark. I mean, Kim's the guy right now, and I can see why, but Iowa's going to be baiting him into some throws,
right.
And that's going to be a tough.
But it's not. He might be a little bit bigger, but at the same time, is like if his strength is some of the downfield or intermediate throws or whatever. I don't see how you can have much success with a quarterback that can't complete short passes.
Oh, he can. I mean, he's not as sharp as Kim on that stuff, but Hauser can do
pressure.
That. And he's a redshirt freshman who's still improving.
It's a difference. What I'm saying is not that he can't do it because I've seen him do it in practice. I'm saying doing it under pressure, and that's a whole different. That's
the thing. He might be better under pressure. He might have better pocket poise and pocket feel than Kim. I don't know. We're still learning about these guys 4 games in.
The other thing we're talking about quarterbacks, and I think it's easy to talk about quarterbacks because they're the guys that trigger everything. At the same time, the offensive line is like in the run game and all that stuff we talked about going into the season. If the run game operation, if the offensive line doesn't pass protect, if there's continuing breakdowns, if 10 guys are doing their job but one guy's not in the course of a play, it's not really going to matter much who your quarterback is.
Ooh. All right, so the rest of the picture, coaching situation, any Michigan State fan that's out there is looking at other coaches, and we are too. Duke blew out UConn today. UConn went to a bowl game last year. They're 0-4 this year, but Duke 49-0. They're going to get Notre Dame here pretty soon in a week or so. Mike Elko, attractive coach for any opening that's going to come about this season. Texas A&M with a win today, so the Texas A&M fans aren't getting rid of Jimbo Fisher this week. And if they ever do get rid of Jimbo Fisher, Mike Elko is going to be high on that list because he was a defensive coordinator at A&M. They still like him there. However, at A&M, they also have their eye on Lane Kiffin, but I think he's losing to Alabama right now.
Yeah, but Lane Kiffin is the guy that, perception-wise, like if you look at top however many coaches, Lane Kiffin's always on that. And then there's the troll factor with Lane Kiffin that fits really well in SEC country, and Texas A&M would love that. The fact that this week trolling Alabama, and baiting Saban on some stuff. I can't remember exactly what the controversy was this week, but I'm just saying, like in the SEC country, that gotcha,
the wise guy stuff.
Yeah, that plays really well, and
all these things have a domino effect on Michigan State's situation.
Absolutely.
Now, Ole Miss lost 5 games last year. Everybody talks about how great Lane Kiffin was. They lost 5 games. They lose 4 games again. Maybe A&M doesn't go after him if they get rid of Fisher. But, Fisher won today, Jimbo Fisher at A&M. So, and I'm watching highlights right now. I mean, your guy at Washington State got off to a good start today at Oregon State. Both of those coaches by the end of the year could have real nice resumes for job openings as things continue to progress. Harlan Barnett's fighting real hard to keep his job. A lot of people pulling for him. But Michigan State, they'll have some choices of some interesting candidates as well. We've done some extensive features about what the coaching landscape looks like at SpartanMag.com. And if you're not a SpartanMag.com subscriber, get over there, check that out. We'd love to have you. I think right now for another day or so you can get it for $1 for a month. I really looked for the entire nation. I went over every team in the Power 5 and the current coach and where each program took that coach from, where they came from. And I thought it was kind of instructive. I wasn't sure what I would see, but basically what it gets down to and the takeaways from some of the subscribers is that, the fan who has this nameless, faceless idea of a coach that must be out there somewhere in the universe that's going to come in and be the perfect coach. It's hard to find somebody like that. And to give an example, there were 15 coaches last year in Power 5 that had a winning record and were under the age of 50. And I'm not saying that you should get rid of anyone who's over 50, but I'm just saying the 50 and under is something we see on the message board. That's what a lot of people want. So 50 and under, there were 15 coaches that merely had a winning record. 7 of those are untouchable. 7 of those are Lincoln Riley, Ryan Day, Sarkisian, Heupel at Tennessee, untouchable because he's making $9 million a year. 7 are untouchable. And then there's 8 other ones. And out of those, there's Dickert at Washington State. There's Jonathan Smith at Oregon State, Elko at Duke, Fleck at Minnesota. It's a small group of 7, and we're looking at the group of 5 coaches as well. But to just look at the whole menu, you can't really just pick somebody. Oh, that's the next Bear Bryant. Let's bring that guy in. So go read it. Become a subscriber. It's lengthy, and we had another one on Monday where we looked at the landscape. We've got more coming up. If you're interested in the job search, go to SpartanMag.com. We're really digging deep into that in terms of who's available, who's realistic, and what are the dynamics in play there.
Yeah, and I hear you hear some chatter in the press box today. You got some younger I'm not saying state news, but guys that are college age, they're talking about who might be the best fit. I hear offensive coordinator from Colorado. I heard that name come up today, and I'm thinking they can't run the ball if their life depended on it. I've listened to him on the radio with Gary Barnett, the old ball coach on there, and he's talking about he's like everyone's loading up. We can't run the ball on a short yardage situation if we need it. And I'm like, okay, one of the things that I would steer clear from.
You talk about the Gary Barnett, the Colorado broadcast.
Yeah. And he's talking about people are saying, Colorado offensive coordinator. Oh, he's doing a great job under Deion Sanders. I'm like, one of the things I would steer clear of, not steer clear of necessarily, but I would take with a grain of salt is anyone that has a quarterback that's a really, really good quarterback. It's like Shedeur Sanders is a good quarterback. He can do a lot of different things, but I'm like, okay, why is this guy doing well? Well, maybe he's got a great quarterback.
I think they scored 0 points today.
Did they score 0 points today? Oh, if you can't run the football, you're going to run into that. And
what you're talking about with the quarterback, you'd stay clear.
But I'm just saying one of the things I would say. People are like, oh, like coordinators, and you're like, okay, so if you're looking at a coordinator, what I want to know is his personnel. Is that guy? What has that guy done over the course of his career with different types of players? Like maybe this year he's got, once in a career type quarterback. So I think you got to take a lot of things with a grain of salt when you're looking at the coaching search. What works in one instance might not work in others. I like guys that have done a lot with very little. I also like guys that fit personality-wise to university. Lane Kiffin would not. I'm just saying, for example, he would not fit well here.
Nope.
Like a PJ Fleck. I've seen what he can do in the Midwest, and I think he would fit the model here.
Yeah.
So,
like Sonny Dykes, we talked about him before. Right. He went out to Cal Berkeley and it didn't work out. He comes back and goes to SMU success, TCU success. He's a Texan. Right. Didn't work at Cal Berkeley. I mean, from 1,000 miles away, someone should have been able to figure that one out.
You talk about Josh Heupel, but look at him. Look at how many coaches that Tennessee has gone through.
Oh yeah.
And
he's not in the clear there. He had a good year last year.
Right. And you look at guys like the Florida coach. He was hyped up as one of the top 5 coaching.
Billy Napier at Louisiana.
Napier on the rise. He's a rising coach.
Came into this year's severe hot seat.
Right.
Then they beat Tennessee. Now he's good again, and now Tennessee's in the hot seat. It's a tough racket. Usually, 2/3 of the teams the coach is going to be gone within 6 years. The other thing, when I looked at in the Power 5, like the bottom half of the Power 5, like the 34 teams that aren't elite that are in the Power 5, there were only 13 of those 34 who hired their coach prior to 2020. like 40-some plus have hired a new coach since 2020. There's turnover. And one of the reasons that coordinators are attractive is because they've never lost a game.
Exactly.
They've never lost a game, so that there's no blemish there. If you're a head coach and you're semi-successful for a few years, you start losing some games, and people say, "Well, you're not perfect. If you're not perfect, we don't want you. We're going for we want to get someone who's great." And you've already proven that you're not great, Pat Narduzzi, Dave Doran at North Carolina State. You've already proven that you're not great. I want to get Brian Hartline because he's never lost a game yet. Nothing against any of those people. I'm just talking.
Brian Hartline might be a great fit here. He almost came here as a recruit back in the day. Good friends with Brian Hoyer, former Michigan State quarterback.
Great recruiter at Ohio State.
Exactly.
Paul would be a good recruiter at Ohio State.
Jim Bowman was. Mark D'Antonio was a really good recruiter at Ohio State.
Mel Tucker was a great recruiter at Georgia.
Mel Tucker was a great recruiter at Ohio State, too. And so it's like how you fit. John L. Smith, for example, was not a good fit here. And,
correct.
Mark D'Antonio was. Mark D'Antonio was national championship coordinator, but his career path was pretty impressive in that he went to a place like Cincinnati that he had intimate knowledge of the Ohio landscape, and it fit him.
And he didn't have a great record at Cincinnati, but the fact that he had the organizational experience of being a head coach at Cincinnati and that he knew this place allowed him to step in and just start planting from the beginning and making traction.
I'll go back to that, what he did. He took Cincinnati from Conference USA to the Big East, and that was a huge jump up in terms of talent and whatnot. And they had they did a nice job putting NFL guys in the NFL out of Cincinnati. And you go back to Mark D'Antonio's first recruiting class here, I think there's 7 NFL guys. So player development, there's a lot of different things that they have to go into it.
An 18 and 17 coach at Cincinnati right now would not get this job now. They're just, I don't know what has changed. I don't know, but it wouldn't happen unless there's a strong AD that says no. I know that this is the guy that can fit right here, right now. Elko is certainly interesting. Your head coach at Duke. He was an assistant coach at Bowling Green under Clausen. Came up, watched Clausen do a lot of things. Clausen at Wake Forest is good. I don't know how high his ceiling would be.
And I don't know if his personality fits Michigan State.
He's got a little more of a stodgy personality, just not quite. And I don't know how high his ceiling. He did a great job at Wake Forest. He's done a great job there. But he worked with Elko. Elko saw him build some programs, which is beneficial. And Elko's a hot name right now. Things can change, but they're 4-0 right now. I mean, by the end of the year, they might be 6-6, and the bloom can wear off a little bit. But Elko is someone to keep an eye on. And if you're Michigan State, you kind of hope that there's not any other more attractive program that comes open in the meantime. That's a long way down the road, but these are things Michigan State observers and fans are talking about, and athletic administrators, I promise you.
And they've got a lot more time to do their due diligence. Like the timing of the last hire, it was late in the game, and
you have to wonder about the vetting process there. I know that Michigan State was
poor. The vetting process was terrible.
And the vetting process for Fickell, who was the lead candidate, and it was his job, and he had pretty much said he was going to take it, and then it broke down at the end. Michigan State spent a few days with the vetting process with him. In the meantime, what I don't know for a fact, but did they do the vetting on everybody else in the meantime in the back burner? Or did they think that was so much of a slam dunk that they didn't need to? Well, then they got in a hurry and a scramble and ended up maybe the vetting process wasn't so great with Tucker. That's what you have to wonder about. So right now they have a chance to do a vetting process on a lot of people, even maybe before they know they're a candidate.
Right. And the other thing, too, is there's some jobs that just aren't open right now. You know what I'm saying? Like the allure of a potential Notre Dame job when Fickell was that was still out there.
Yeah.
For the whispers of Ohio State people being like, well, Fickell's not that great, and some people still say it because he didn't do well. He needs an interim coach here. That sounds really stupid now, and it sounds stupid to me back then, but. Those kind of things are out there. Not with him, but some people say stupid things, and you have to account for them. I mean, you can do the vetting process, but then someone brings up an objection or like, what about my guy that you've never even heard of? But the fact that Michigan State has more time to do it, and the fact that I think they'll be more proactive, I'm not a big fan of just looking at search firms.
It didn't work so good last time.
No, and you think about it, like someone that's going to, when you think about really the kind of person that would leave a job, being there for 1 year and take a new coaching job, I mean, to me, that's almost a red flag right there, but it is what it is.
Sure. And some of the things I'll be looking into, I want to look at offensive coordinators that have been hired around the country in the last 5 or 6 years, how they did, where they came from. And I'm not talking about people that were hired from within, like the guy at Notre Dame or the guy at Ohio State, guys that were kind of elevated that just take the baton and keep going. Dan Lanning is interesting at Oregon, but he went to a program that had recruited really well. He was a defensive coordinator at Georgia. They won big today. They're looking pretty good right now. He's coached 14 games. Okay, that looks all right. But Lanning was essentially like a Mel Tucker. A coordinator. Tucker got the job. Yeah, he coached 1 year at Colorado, but he got his job based on being a coordinator at Georgia.
Exactly.
So how are other coordinators doing? Dave Aranda was a big-time coordinator at LSU and Wisconsin. Got the job at Baylor. Had one good year, and last year they were sub 500. Then today they're playing Texas right now. But
sometimes
a highly respected coordinator, but.
Sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. You think of the guys in the Big Ten that have gotten coordinated, like guys from Michigan or Ohio State. Chris Ash when he went to was it Maryland?
Rutgers, and
that was terrible. And then
Brent Pry at Virginia Tech right now coming from Penn State. It's basically most coaches like Tom Izzo will tell you are set up to fail, and in the long run they'll eventually do. There's another line I've been using that you'll get sick of is. Every hand is a winner and every hand's a loser. Michigan State can look at like 5 or 6 or 10 candidates right now, and Paul, out of those 10, there's probably 2 that are going to be great somewhere or really good somewhere, and there's going to be 4 that are going to be terrible somewhere, and then about 6 that are going to be like 7 and 5 type of coaches. And knowing who is who is impossible.
It is
impossible to tell you. Sometimes you just get lucky, but you can set yourself up
unlucky.
with some educated guesses and some percentage positives. Like D'Antonio had some percentage positives on the way in that his win-loss record didn't reveal. So Michigan State's got to dig into those, and we'll see. I have been hearing that there is interest, and there's people that view a Michigan State job a Big Ten job. People want in, so maybe there'll be someone that you don't expect. I don't know. Like no one expected LSU to go and steal away Brian Kelly. No one expected USC to go get Lincoln Riley. Michigan State's not in those leagues in terms of bringing somebody in, but you never know when somebody is interested that maybe we're not expecting right now. But everybody's talking about some of those coaches that are successful at non-football power schools: Oregon State, Washington State, Duke. So we'll keep an eye on that as it goes forward. In the meantime, we'll watch Michigan State. It's easy to root for these guys because they're out there playing their hearts out. Throw the ball away a couple times. This one gets away from them. Schedule's difficult. Everybody knows that. But if you're a Michigan State fan, I think you're still obviously pulling for these guys to get to a bowl game. Even if it's 6-6, do you still want them to go to a quick lane bowl in Detroit? That's up for you guys to decide. For me, I think it'd be good. Get in there, get those practices. I don't mind going to Detroit for a bowl game. It's a little easier on the budget. I don't know if fans would agree or not. But
after sitting home last year and not going to bowl, I think Michigan State, you take what you can get.
Well, think about this. Once how these things snowball, if you don't get bowl practices, and it's usually like 12 or 14 practices, it might not be the full 15 anymore like it used to because the season goes longer and so forth.
Right, and if you get a lower tier bowl, you got exams coming up, so you're not. It's earlier in December, so you're really getting a couple weeks of practice, but it's of benefit.
Yeah, and they used to talk about bowl practices being like another spring practice because you get these extra sessions in. If you go 2 straight years and you're Zion Young and you miss out on 30 practices, 15 this year, 15 last year, bowl practices, or you're Mangum or Malik Spencer, some of these young players that were not here in 2021, or just any player that's been around, Dylan Tatum last year. If you don't get bowl practices again this year, in terms of player development, that becomes a negative snowball.
Think of the scout team players, the guys that are underclass.
Malcolm Jones.
But you look at like guys like offensive tackles or whatever, younger guys going up against Zion Young, going up against Simeon Barrow. That's as valuable as anything. So
guys like Wigginton, some of these guys that are trying to break in, for that reason, people talk about bowl practices being overrated. For 1 year, maybe. But you do it twice and you miss bowl twice, there's something to play for there. And they're going to keep battling, I think. It looks to me like they are as of 4 games. So a strange Michigan State football season to cover thus far. Appreciate everybody coming in and checking us out and subscribing and supporting SpartanMag.com. Anything else, Paul? For Paul Konyndyk, my name is Jim Comparoni. Been watching the VCast, SpartanMag.com with the Spartans from Spartan Stadium, the VCast. Thanks for joining in.